Close to half of all South Africans now live in towns and cities. There seems to be no slowing of this trend. The 2011 census shows that rural provinces like the Eastern Cape have a declining population, while urban centres like Gauteng show massive growth in population at rates that are very difficult to plan for and even more difficult to develop for. The growth pressure on South African cities in the last 20 years has of course been the engine driving change in this country, because where there is growth, there is a drive for transformation. This has necessitated a profound revisioning and reimagining of what were old colonial and apartheid cities. This urbanization pressure has created the perfect opportunity for change, because nowhere else on the globe since World War II has there been a need for urban spatial transformation as here in post-apartheid South Africa. I invite anybody to contest that statement. There are great obstacles to change, but our limited resources, old paradigms, old thinking, and vested interests are of those obstacles. Not surprisingly, therefore, the process of transformation has been flawed. No matter how you look at it, the current reality in South African cities, 19 years into democracy, can still, without hesitation, without exception, be described in the terms town and township. All of our cities are currently characterized by the following. Inner cities facing decline, degradation, increased vacancies and deflated rentals. Sterile, remote, middle-class suburbs that remain crime-affected and under siege of roaming criminal gangs. Government-subsidized housing is very poorly located, very poorly serviced, and of very poor quality, and even more beset by roaming criminal gangs. The lack of spatial integration denies particularly the poor and the new urban immigrants access to critical urban resources and the urban economy. In spite of good policy documents, South African cities have continued to become massive, sprawling, polluting, fossil fuel dependent urban regions that experience high levels of crime because of shortcomings in the urban economy and the weak social infrastructure present in those cities. These cities, in many ways, are monuments to inefficiency, social dislocation, and environmental degradation. To this day, our cities remain memorials to apartheid's most visible and vicious social engineering projects, divided between rich and poor, black and white, and well-serviced and poorly serviced. But what is perhaps worse is the fact that, far from turning around this inherited pattern, the forces acting on our model of development since 1994 have rather perpetuated and reinforced this failed pattern. As we speak, this pattern is playing itself out in the city that is hosting this important conference, Nelson Mandela Bay metropolitan area, will in the coming months see massive new sprawling developments beyond Motherwell to the east and outside Sherwood to the west of the metro. The process is now well underway to obtain approval for a 6 billion rand mixed residential development beyond Motherwell along the road to Addo, and the construction has already commenced on a massive new regional shopping centre to the west along the N2. But most curiously, this crisis in South African cities continues at a time when there are skills and resources available in the public, private and academic sectors to address these challenges, and in fact to transform our cities into vibrant models of balance, harmony and sustainability. The fact is that we're not living in southern Somalia or Sudan, one of those new countries where they have no skills and they have no capacity. They have a good excuse for being underdeveloped. We do have the capacity, so it's perhaps even more pressing a problem. It is therefore the position of the Eastern Cape Institute of Architects that the most significant obstacle to meaningful urban transformation in South Africa lies not in the shortage of academic know-how, not in the shortage of public sector investment, not in the shortage of private sector mobilization, but rather in the entrenched dysfunctional relationship between these three sectors. Each of these three sectors operates increasingly as a silo, separate from each other, with no mechanisms available for true collaboration. The public sector has become driven by a number of imperatives that require it to procure the services offered by the private sector in a standardized mechanism designed to procure other goods and services, like fax paper and toilet paper. The obvious fact that public and private sectors can best serve the urban crisis by contributing the best from their ranks to collaborate in providing vision, leadership, and direction is of no concern to the faceless authors of our public sector supply chain management procedures. The unavoidable net result of this strategy is a contested, completely unproductive standoff between the public sector urban silo and the private sector urban silo. No vision emerges from the standoff, no leadership emerges from the standoff, only safe, compliant, cost-effective implementation. Even if a municipality has a clean audit for 10 years in a row, it doesn't necessarily have to show that it's done anything of quality in the built environment. Clean audits are what we're looking for. Those are the measurables. In a similar way, urbanists and I call them urbanists because I don't want to say architects, but architects and urbanists, and those people that are working in the urban field, let's agree to call them urbanists, like the Brazilians do. In a similar way, urbanists in the academic silo come under increasing pressure to focus not on the South African urban crisis, but rather on purer academic pursuits. A youngster with a PhD that deals with some arcane branch of architectural theory is much more likely to assume a professorship in architecture than a practitioner with 20 years' experience in city building. This trend seems unstoppable, with the momentum developed from very high up in South Africa's higher education community. Architects who teach are now actively discouraged from participating in private practice. Those from the private practice who give up their time at university to share their experience generally do so as volunteers and must turn away hourly paid work to do so. Academics offering to serve the public sector are treated in the same way as their private sector counterparts, as a commodity to be bought through a procurement system with the same resultant frustration. Either that or academics and practitioners are thrown into a room like this in a series of public participation processes. So, highest level of academic thought would sit at the back of the room and raise his hand timidly and try to argue for the mic against car guards and housewives and estate agents. That's called public participation. It's just a waste of time. In architectural practices everywhere, we find that the energies of the brightest minds are committed to pure commercial pursuits. Top architects and top firms dedicate a disproportionate amount of their time on bids, tenders, and RFPs. RFPs are horrible things, requests for proposal. When projects are moving, architects at the top of their game commit most of their valuable time and energy in managing risk, solving conflict, and ensuring cash flow. Very, very little time is here for reading, studying, engaging, traveling, or developing a perspective that we know is required to see the bigger urban picture. Leander spoke about that last night when we were here. Research and development have become expensive swear words in architectural practices that are interested in staying in business. If you're interested in staying in business, stay away from those swear words, research and development. They cost time, they cost money, and they don't give any return. This is the disease in the minds of all of us private practice participants. In this way, the silos grow more and more isolated. The positions within them become more and more entrenched. Urbanists and architects of otherwise impeccable credentials begin to withdraw into cynicism and isolation. Great ideas are shelved, big visions parked, energy diverted. Is there a solution? Is there any alternative to these dysfunctional relationships? Is there any way out of this urban crisis? Of course there is. These challenges were made by people like you and I, and they can be overcome by people like you and I. In the light of the above, therefore, the Eastern Cape Institute of Architects, an organization that is 112 years old, by the way, established in 1900, is proposing a very small but important steps that each of us could take. The ECIA, therefore, moves that this conference accepts the following. Number one, Progress in addressing the crisis in South African cities is dependent on the effective collaboration between urbanists located in the public, private, and academic sectors. Emphasis on the word effective. Effective collaboration is significantly obstructed by current supply chain management procedures. Position number 3. Effective collaboration is significantly obstructed by current higher education human resource management practices. Number 4. Progress in addressing the crisis of South African cities is significantly hampered by the lack of private sector commitment to research and development. The ECIA therefore moves that it be mandated by this conference to A. Engage with and inform public sector agencies with the aim of establishing effective protocols allowing for meaningful mutual support at appropriate levels. Emphasis on appropriate. B. Engage with and inform institutions of higher learning regarding the need to ensure that architecture and other built environment programs remain professional degrees offered by academics with exemplary professional experience. Emphasis on the last 2 words, professional experience. C. Engage with private sector architects and urbanists with a view to exploring best practice regarding the establishment of effective research and development programs. Thank you. And thank you for clapping, but that's what we're saying. We're not saying this because we're absolutely certain that this is a useful step to take. But we know that by not taking any step, we're not going to get anywhere. We've tried that before. We've tried not taking a step, and we have found that it doesn't take us anywhere. So we really want to discuss this, and we really want advice. The advice could be, don't waste your time, it's not going to happen. Or rather focus on that and rather do that. Why we're putting something forward is because we want to debate it, we want to discuss it, and we want your leadership. Thank you very much.